couldn't be with us today. He had a bank, I think, a engagement at work, a bank board meeting that he could not avoid. They got moved for the Christmas holiday, so he left me at your mercy. So be gentle. It's my first time chairing this meeting. So we call the meeting to order. The first thing on the agenda is the public comment period. And we have two people signed up to speak this morning. The first one is Ellis James. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Ellis James, and as many of you know, I am a Sierra Club observer at these meetings. I'd like to call something to your attention this morning for those of you who might have missed it. Transportation, which is one of the major contributors to our air quality issues and problems that we have in Hampton roads, is going to take a double hit, in my opinion, in the not too distant future. Planners recommend coal plant approval. As most of you around this table know, our prevailing wind direction is out of the southwest. People in Williamsburg and other areas along the peninsula down into Southside Hampton roads are going to be in a situation, if you connect the dots, in a situation where our air quality will be greatly diminished and degraded, in my humble opinion. I wanted to call this to your attention because the connection should be obvious. You are confronted with making decisions that need to be made as quickly and reasonably as possible to help with our traffic problems. Because if we take more traffic backup and all of the problems that you're familiar with, and add that to the emissions from a coal-fired power plant, we're going to have in Hampton roads serious problems with respect to our air quality. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. The next citizen signed up to speak is Cecil Goodwin.
Thank you, Lady Chairperson, distinguished guest. This is my first time appearing before the board, and I'm very much impressed with all the activity we have here. I'm addressing the board as a concerned citizen. I hope I'm not too late in the things that we're looking at and talking about, which is my main concern of all the talk about a new Midtown tunnel and putting a toll on all the other tunnels. As a concerned citizen, I wanted to address the board and ask you to take in consideration what's to the best interest of the citizens out there. A lot of the people that use the tunnel are working class people, and if you're talking $5 a day, that might not sound much to you, but for somebody that's only making $10 an hour, it gets significant. My concerns and the fact that I'm a retired facility management engineer from the Army, and when I look at the plan and the proposal of what they are proposing in putting a Midtown tunnel there, I just see a folly coming in the fact that you've got a nice interstate on the Portsmouth side to handle the traffic there, but you're turning around and you're dumping more traffic into a residential area on Hampton Boulevard. So if you have a 10-inch valve or a 10-inch line going into a 3-inch pipe, guess what? You can't push much more through there than what the 10-inch pipe is. And like I said, coming back and putting a Midtown tunnel in there, it looks good on paper, but is it really going to contribute to the relief for the transportation problems you have there. The tunnel traffic, the tunnel that we have, the crossings that we have now, yes, they get backed up, but it's for what, 2 or 3 hours in the morning, or maybe 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon. But for the most part, they are able to carry the load that you have there. And I think the board would be better served looking at what is going to be the overall better financial plan, or not financial plan, but what's going to be the solution to it, in the fact that you need to tie it in to an interstate system. We've got the Gilberton Bridge, not the Gilberton Bridge, but the bridge over by the shipyard, which is going in, and that's serving the traffic. It's going to eventually tie into the interstate, and also it ties into the interstate there. I would suggest the board better look and say maybe what we need to do is when we're putting in these new tunnel crossings, put them where you've got relief on both sides. Don't say we're going to put it in there and jam it into a residential area. That's just creating a folly, and that's creating a bottleneck. So I would look at it and ask the board to consider what is the best solution in the long run, long-range plans, because again, when you put tolls on there, you're taxing the people, and you're making them pay for a public contractor plus government inspectors. You're just putting a burden on the people and really not offering many benefits other than give them a tunnel that's going to stop more. I would like to end with the fact that when you look at tolls, what I look at tolls, it's another form, it's another word for a tax, and that's what the medieval kings used to do when they wanted to raise revenue for the coffers. They put a toll on the road, and I ask you not to regress to medieval times and turn around and tax the public on something that we should be more efficient in planning. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Chris Melandowski.
Distinguished board, TPO staff, it's an honor to be here today. My name is Chris Melandowski. I am a Norfolk citizen, Hampton Roads citizen, let's put it that way. I just wanted to congratulate you so far in ratcheting up your efforts. It's showing, we're seeing it in the news, fixing the problem of the bridge lifts at the 264. I'd like to see more of that in the future. I think it can be argued that our issues here in Hampton Roads, the largest metro area directly on the Atlantic coast between South Florida and Greater New York, it has become a federal FEMA Homeland Security issue that should warrant federal FEMA Homeland Security emergency funding to get our area up to speed transportation-wise. And I would say submit, and I would hope that it's being considered that you guys, as a group, our de facto government, our city council, would go as a group to Congress, to the president, to FEMA, whoever, and make the case known as a group personally. Obviously, it also entails beating down the doors in Richmond, which I know you have done, a bunch of you have done individually, but I think it's more effective as a group. And then finally, going to Raleigh and asking, how can we work together? We want to open up Hampton Roads to the world. So that's all I have to say. I would just ask, thank you for turning up the heat. We hope that you will do it more. We're depending on you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, our next item is approval of the agenda. I know we have one additional item, which is under new business, which is Mr. Hewer from Virginia Department of Transportation has a letter. I think everybody's gotten a copy of it at their place that we're going to go over under new business. Does anybody else have anything they want to add to the agenda? All right, we need a motion to approve.
Need a motion to
Second, a
approve.
motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, thank you. The next thing is the consent agenda.
Madam Chairman, we need the record keepers need a official motion person and a second.
All right, we had Doug, and who was second? Dennis.
Dennis was second. Okay, we're good.
All right, that brings us to the consent agenda. Mr. Farmer?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the items are listed here 1 through 5. These are, for the most part, housekeeping. Item number 5 is an item we've been talking about for several months. We're poised to work with some university folks to get some focus group work done for public participation. We think that'll help round out our program. So the consent agenda is presented for your approval unless someone would like to pull one item for detailed discussion.
I move for approval.
Second.
All right, so Ms. Johnson has moved for approval, second from Jeannie Zeidler. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Yes, sir. Mr. Miller?
Can we pull, number 5 deals with CMU?
Sure.
Can we pull that out and vote on that? I need to abstain.
All right, on item number 5. All right, Linda, do you mind making a revised motion for 1 through 4?
No, I'll amend the agenda for 1 through 4.
Jeannie will second. All right, so can get a vote? Everybody in favor of 1 through 4?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, then item number 5.
I move for the approval.
All right, so Jeannie will move to second it. So everybody votes aye except for Mr. Miller who would like to abstain. All right. All right, so nobody else opposed? All right, thank you. All right, that brings us to item number 6.
Madam Chairman, I have a slide presentation to give you this morning. If you don't mind, I'll do it from here and answer any questions. This first slide, as you know, we have been on record. Actually, staff has been on record, attended a public hearing here at this facility, I believe June 4th of this past summer. We have expressed some concerns, in particular about interstate funding. There have been some concerns expressed by others about looking just at one system of funding. So what I have before you this morning are a couple slides. If you'll notice in the upper right-hand side, we're talking about the entire 6-year program, 2000 for the revised program, 2010 through 2015. And just below that, we've highlighted on this slide that we're talking in this particular slide all systems of funding, not just interstate funding in the 6-year improvement program. What you see for the 6-year program for all systems of funding at the bottom right, despite what we've seen as the headline news of a cut in revenue, the information shown on the VDOT website, as staff has reviewed this, indicates that the 6-year improvement program is actually going to go up over the 6 years from the previous version by 1%. And if you look in the yellow highlighted row, you will see that Hampton Roads funding for the entire 6 years for all systems of funding has also gone up 1%. So it appears this region is doing about what the entire state is doing, and we've been held whole, relatively speaking. Next slide, please. Next, I'd like to point out for fiscal year FY10, that's the fiscal year that we're in right now. Again, this slide is for all systems of funding, not just interstate. You will see at the lower right-hand corner of this particular slide, again, despite the headline news on the press releases from the state that there's a cut in revenue, that for FY10, the 6-year improvement program, as best we can ascertain, has a 4% increase in funding. We have highlighted Hampton Roads, and this is what first got my attention, again, just like it did in June, that we are staged in FY10 for all systems of funding to receive a 13% cut in our FY10 funding, again from $120.2 million down to $104.6 million. What further concerns staff is that all other districts are staged to receive an increase in all funding sources for FY fiscal year 10. Again, this district is the only district receiving a cut, and a substantial one, at 13%. Next slide, please. What I have done, and this particular slide is really informational material. I'm not real desirous to go into the weeds on this particular one, but I thought it would be important that everyone have in their hand, in case they did have some issues. You can see every district by each of the 6 fiscal years for all systems of funding, what will occur in each district. So you can see we start out with out of the 1.114 billion of money we're receiving, less than 10% of the funding in 2010. For all systems of funding, 7.2% in FY11. It starts to come back to 12.6 in 2013, 14, and 15. We do get back to a number that I would assume you would see somewhere in the neighborhood of 18 to 20, 21%. We do get back in the 15 to 18% range. And when we get to the end, for the entire 6 years, our share of all systems of funding in the 6-year improvement program for all years is 13%. Next slide, please. The importance of this particular slide really is about how we were apparently being kept whole in the 6-year improvement program. And really all I need to do is take you, and this is for interstate system funding alone. If you look at the row for Hampton Roads and you go to the column FY 2015, you will see in that particular year, we've started from FY10 of 17.1 million out of almost 300 million, and we're staged to receive almost 100 million out of 223 million, but in 2015. Now, what I'd like to turn your attention to is in your packet is the letter that I put together as a staff letter for the December 1st public hearing. I think it is important for you folks to understand that I did receive a call from our CTB member, Aubrey Lane, on that day. He has asked for assistance in helping him prepare for the meeting that night on December 1st. I agreed during that telephone conversation to put such a letter together. I did, and that letter is contained in here. It's my understanding that Mr. Lane did, in fact, read this as the CTB member representing Hampton Roads District. He read this into the record. But since it's the first time I've had an opportunity to meet with you folks, I'd like to take just a couple minutes to go through the bullets in here. Again, as you've seen on the slide in the first bullet, we were surprised when we actually went into the information, and I think a lot of folks still are surprised that the 6-year improvement program, as best we can tell, did not go down due to the cuts in revenue, but actually went up. That we actually, for FY10, had a 13% decrease, while all of the other districts received an increase. The second bullet highlights the point I made in an earlier slide. It appears we were made whole, not to say that that was the intent, but it appears we were made whole by nearly $100 million in FY 2015 interstate allocations. That gave us the 1% increase over the 6 years for all systems of funding for all 6 years. In the third bullet, I think I make it clear in the 30-some years I've been in this business in Hampton Roads, I've never seen this district zeroed out completely for new interstate funding allocations. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong, I'm just saying I've never seen it before. In the fourth bullet, I make note of the new policy that I believe, maybe Mr. Huer, I don't want to put him on the spot this morning, but it's my understanding, if I'm wrong, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not throwing you under the bus here, Dennis, but I might have to do that anyway. I am of the impression, and I think the new policy has merit on the surface, that is, under this state of financial reality, that the Secretary has indicated that he needs to change the policy and put money onto projects that really are staged to be built and could be built within this program. Well, when I see all of the interstate monies taken off of design work for widening of 64 on the peninsula, as an example, and all the money taken off of, substantial amounts of money taken off of the 64-264 interchange, for example, I don't know how you can get those projects ready to go. I don't want to call it a fait accompli, but to me it sounds like you can't get where we need to be to get our project staged up, particularly if there's an economic stimulus phase 2. So I expressed some concern. While I don't disagree with the philosophy, it looks like we've been locked out of some future opportunities. Finally, I've expressed some concern in the concluding paragraph that states, we've not been approached since the opportunity to have public comments, which I did make in person at the public hearing here in June, expressing similar concerns. I don't believe we or any of the other MPOs have been asked to sit at a table in crafting the revised 6-year improvement program. In fact, in all my years, normally we wait with everyone else to receive the good or bad news in the 6-year improvement program. So this has been submitted. If you would like for me to appear in person tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock for the board meeting when they do take a vote on this, I'm certainly willing to go. I don't believe, and Dennis, please correct me if I'm wrong, here, or Aubrey, I think in the back, and I think Dana was supposed to be here. I don't think that the meeting is staged to be a public hearing for the 6-year program, but public comment is permitted during the meeting, just as we do here.
Yeah, to your question, the public hearing was held 2 weeks ago.
December 1st.
You submitted this letter.
Right.
But just like this meeting is open to the public and public comment is accepted, that is the format for the CPB.
So I could show up and I or we would each get 3 minutes to make any statements we'd like to make. So.
Mayor Frank?
Right, I think it's relevant for us to understand what the rationale is for why there's no money for interstate programming, for example, and why this region is decidedly underfunded in projections from other regions around the Commonwealth. I think going and asking for that explanation would be where that.
Senator Miller.
Yes, I'd like to say, in addition to what the mayor just said, it's also critical for members of the General Assembly to understand why that's the case. There are a number of members from this region who would have great concerns to learn that we are being funded less than other regions.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
it's not so much that we're not being funded as much as other reasons. It looks like regions. It's like some of the money's going to Northern Virginia, percentage.
In one case, I found it pretty interesting that in one particular year, Northern Virginia receives 93+% of the entire state interstate allocation. I would think other districts would also have the same question.
I mean, part of the rationale I know is they've got projects under construction, so they're funding complete construction. I understand that. But it seems to me that we really do need to have an appearance to make it clear that, you know, equity is important and that all parts of the state ought to be treated equitably. And it's particularly important when there's not adequate resources and funding to go around and do everything. You know, one part of the state will not suffer at the expense of another part.
Madam Chairman, could I comment on that remark? The best we can tell, Mayor Frank, Northern Virginia is staged to receive interstate allocations, some of which on maintenance, rehab, and much of which is on construction in a 6-year program. I think there's 31 projects in Northern Virginia staged to receive interstate allocations. 7 are staged to receive interstate allocations in Hampton Roads, to give you a relative balance.
Thank you. I really want to ask a more cogent question. Why do you need permission from us to do something that's imperative to the body? You should have been there maybe 2 weeks ago. You should not have that temerity or the fear that you should not go and represent us. I mean, is there something holding you back?
I had not, Mayor Krasnoff, I had not been able to, because of the timing of the public hearing and then the receipt of the information from a staff analysis, to bring it before the board. It's normally my policy to stand before another board and express a concern about a policy, to bring it here before I do that. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, I have already stood in front of the VDOT, Commonwealth Transportation Board members from this district, in front of the commissioner, in front of the secretary, expressing my concern on June 4th of the exact same concerns that are now showing up again in the revised. And I had then presented that information to this entire board during the July 2009 meeting, didn't receive any further guidance as to what we wanted to do after that. And so the 6-year improvement program was approved as presented to the CTB during the summer. I did receive, and Mr. Lane is here to confirm or deny my following statements, that I did receive a call from Mr. Lane expressing a request to assist him in putting together some information that would be helpful, since he is a CTB rep. So I think it's fair to say openly in this public body that he and I had an agreement that as the CTB rep for Hampton Road, if I put the letter together, as you've seen today, he as the rep would read that information into the public record, and I think he did that. And I think he's actually gone a bit beyond and expressed some concerns of his own.
Well, I appreciate all that. And again, from my understanding, the chairman from Northern Virginia was at that meeting. Fredericksburg was there, Fairfax was there, Richmond was there, Sylvania County was there. People were there to express it. One thing I've learned, at least my own personal opinion, I think the manager can vouch, a personal appearance is far more reasonable than a letter, and it will show much more gravity in our concerns. I would hope that you would, I appreciate your reference to the committee, but at the same time in transportation, every day that goes past literally means sometimes months or even longer than that. And somehow you have to be given a freedom to feel reassured and assured, and to be willing, if you want to call it a risk, hopefully it's not a risk that will cost dearly to our Hampton Roads area, but certainly you should be able to feel that freedom to do what you know best. I mean, to not be there 2 weeks ago at a public hearing, I think it's something that we might have lost an opportunity. I don't know when the revision specifically came. We should have been more proactive than sitting here in basically in a test tube where nobody else hears us. So I don't know what you need to let the body tell you when there's something on somebody else's agenda that has a great impact on our region. You should be able to move forward and do it, and then send us a memo letting us know what you're doing. I think we should be all reassured that you are capable of doing that. That's my opinion.
Mr. Lane, do you want to address us? Because you want to come over to the podium if you want to. I'll recognize you. Nobody will be able to hear you.
Thank you. I'll just be brief. Let me predicate my remarks on the fact that I do not believe we are getting our fair share in Hampton Roads. And I do not believe the reason we're not getting it is because Dwight wasn't at that meeting. Maybe he should have been there. My point was that anytime we can be in front of that body, it's to our advantage to do so. But because he wasn't there is not because of the situation that we find ourselves in today. So I agree that we should have more influence, but I want to make it clear that that is not the reason why we have the funding that's on the table today. Couple of updates. I have spent the last week and a half, 2 weeks since the hearing, talking with the Secretary and also Rita Bush, the CFO, going through the various projects to confirm for myself that the policy of funding what we had obligations for is primarily what's being done. If we were given the pot of money today to allocate, certainly we would not allocate it the way it is. And I'm speaking of interstate funding. But that's not what the cards that we were dealt. The cards are there are projects out there that are down the road that the state is obligated on, and with limited resources, that policy was determined to be the first monies to get done. The ebb and flow of the projects necessarily gave a great inequity to many parts of the state, including Hampton roads, but not exclusively to Hampton roads. Now, let me also say I've not decided how I'm going to vote, because we'll see how the public comment and my other board members discussed today in the workshop. But as a logical and practical way of allocating our limited resources, I must tell you I cannot find fault with the way it's being done. Now, I know Dwight mentioned there are 30-some projects in Northern Virginia that are being funded during this period, and there are 8 projects here. If we can find one of those projects that is not as far enough along or does not meet some criteria, that is not equitable, then I would think we would have a chance of possibly moving some monies our way or somewhere else in the state. My cursory review, and I am by no means an expert, but my cursory review is that's going to be difficult to attain. So it's going to, when we reopen it back up, it's not any guarantee that we're going to get any more monies coming this way. I have verified that our budget for maintenance has not been cut. I also know there's some items in the maintenance project that probably should have been in the 6-year plan. And I've used this example before. There's $35 million for upgrading the computer banks at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel that in the past probably would have been the 6-year plan. But I think Mr. Ure will say there's some projects moved there to protect them because we've been borrowing from the trust fund as a state to cover our repairs. So as a state, as a region, we do get the lion's share of repairs. I am not justifying that, and I'll reiterate, I am not happy with the monies we've been allocated for interstate. But I plan to do 3 things today in the work session. One is to state what I've just told you. Second is to let the state and be on record that I believe the Hampton Roads region is in a crisis in terms of transportation, and ask for their help in getting funding for any projects as we get behind and you complete your work, and we come together as a region on which projects we want to prioritize. And I don't think prioritization is the end all, but I do know that we're going to be competing and we're going to have to come together as a region. Mayor Krasnoff has mentioned, and it's a couple people in Northern Virginia, I will say they are together as a region on their projects. And I believe we need to come to that, and I very much appreciate your efforts that you're doing. But I want to go on record at the state that we are in a crisis in Hampton Roads. We all know the incident that happened this morning at the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. It's not just merely talking about it. We need to do something about it. And I believe, I was at a breakfast yesterday morning where Phil Chiquette brought up we have to build something. We have to get going, and that's where I'm coming from. The final thing I will say, Senator Miller brought up, I heard Glenn Oder yesterday, Delegate Oder speak. It is time for our legislators to act. I'm not an ideologue. I don't know where the money should come from, whether it's general fund, whether it's taxes, but we do need to act. We need more transportation revenue monies in the state of Virginia, and we need to fight harder for getting those here in Hampton Roads. So while I wish I could tell you that I had this plan and we're going to bring a bunch of money back this afternoon or tomorrow, I can't guarantee that. I do know that I have the Secretary's assurance that we will not have a zero for year 2011 because I told him I would not vote and have that precedent set for Hampton Roads. But I don't know if that means we're getting $2 million. I doubt it's $200 million. But I do believe we will get some monies put back into the plan, because I agree with Mr. Farmer, we do not want to have a precedent where we have nothing. So I won't take any more of your time. I'll be glad to answer any other questions, but that's where it stands today, and that's what I plan to do to get in the public record.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, I think the question that Mr. Farmer would like answered is that we all encourage him to go tomorrow. Yes, sir.
And Madam Chairman, I mean, bullet point 2 and 3 are very critical, because seeing the state has reallocated funding in the past, by backloading the funding for Hampton Roads is clearly, it gives me no comfort that Hampton Roads will be funded at an appropriate level in the future. I'm willing to attend the meeting as well. It's most convenient for me. I'm only an hour away from the meeting. And if Mr. Farmer could attend, two, that's great, but at least gives us two voices. I know that Northern Virginia people will probably come down anyway, and so I think it's important to have somebody there, and I'll be willing to attend and speak for the TPO if you want to. Otherwise, I'll speak for myself or for the HRPDC or something.
I appreciate that, because that's the next question, is whether some of us in this room should go.
I can make a comment. I think if Bruce would be willing to go, I think it would be good. When this article came out that sort of announced all this, one of my colleagues called up and said, where's the outrage? Where's the regional outrage that this is happening? And there is no circumstance under which you can look at Hampton Roads and say we ought to be getting 10% of the money in the current year. But I'd argue that that number ought to be 23, 24, 25% based on anything you want to say, population, intensity of infrastructure, whatever it is. There's no excuse for us to get that kind of money. And I think for us to be timid at this point, to use Mayor Krasnoff's word, I think that those days are gone. And I think we should go up there and make a very strong statement that this is unacceptable. Think about any time we've approved, if I've approved the CIP, and I've done 3 or 4 of them now and written several as the deputy city manager, how much attention did you pay to year 4 and 5? You know, the reality is it's those end-year terms is where the money gets spent, and that CIP, or in this case this SYIP, is going to get revised 2 or 3 or 4 times, and we're getting shortchanged this year badly. We're going to get shortchanged next year, and we're going to get shortchanged the next year. And we ought to stand up tomorrow, not only Dwight, but board members, and say, this is unacceptable for our region. And I feel strongly about that, and I think that the idea that we're in a test tube down here is right on. And I think it goes to a process of we should have as a course of business, we should have people in front of these different bodies beating the drum with what limited resources there are. We want at least our fair share.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? So you want a motion? Dwight?
I got clear direction. There's
Okay.
no question, unless you folks told me to stay home, I'm going to be there tomorrow morning. You know, but I think, again, put it in the context, Mayor Krasnoff, the people you noted were there for the entire state of Virginia. Mr. Lane, correct me if I'm wrong, because it was only one public hearing and it was in Richmond, 25 showed up for the whole state. I think the whole state fell asleep on this one, folks. I don't think they fell asleep. I just think they felt it was a fait accompli. Again, you know, we had opportunities. I had opportunities. You folks had opportunities back in June. We saw this train coming down the track. But to have a public hearing on a revised 6-year program of this gravity and to have only one public hearing opportunity in Richmond for the whole state, I think, and then not include any of the 13 MPOs in the state is really not the way to do business in the Commonwealth of Virginia, to tell you the truth. As you can see, I'm passionate about this thing, and you know, I thought maybe we had this thing covered. That's a mistake I'm not going to make again, but I think elected officials, as Doug is saying, is very, very important from this point on.
Mayor Frank?
Just one follow-up in a statement. I agree with everything that's been said here. I really appreciate Aubrey, Mr. Lane's service here. I mean, to work as hard as you have for us. I mean, we haven't had that, or at least that sort of passion from a member of our CTB board standing here talking on our behalf that I'm aware of in a long time. So I really do appreciate that. An overlay to everything that's been said here about, let's get our fair share. I mean, there's an imperative here that we very rarely talk about, and that, just a Northeaster the other day, which was, a significant event, put several of our cities almost underwater. I mean, we cannot get out of here in the event of a major storm coming up the coast. I mean, we have to find more evacuation routes to get out of here. And and the Commonwealth owes that to us. I mean, we will have people at risk if we don't improve the road system here. And so, in any event, I'm prepared to support this effort and Dwight's effort and Bruce going up there and everybody going up there and storming the place if we have to.
Madam Chair, I appreciate Bruce being able to go up there, and I think you should do it, but I think if we want to speak with the strength of this body, we should ask our chair or vice chairs. I know that it's short notice, I don't know what, but that's who speaks for this body.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I was looking at my calendar when we were having this conversation, and I will try, I have something tomorrow morning at 8:30, but I'll see if I can move it. it's called the mayor's something something, so I have to find something else to stand up for me. But, yes, sir, Mayor Frank.
Well, I was at that hearing. There were approximately, I think, 25 people. I think they had maybe 7 people speak. And Dennis was there, and, you know, there were choice of how to communicate. So while I think physical presence is important, the process they established was you could comment by mail or email, other forms of communication. There's no requirement that anybody be physically there. I endorse Mayor Presno's comments about, I think being there is better than writing, because who knows who reads the writings, and if you're there, you know who hears the message. So I would just join those in encouraging Dwight to appear, and I have something more that I can't get up there for, but I apologize, but if any of the rest of you could, even if you don't go to speak, but just make your presence known, I think that makes a difference. And I'd like to share Mayor Frame's comment about what I think is the great work of our newest member of the Commonwealth Transportation Board. He's really been engaged, he's talked to people, and he's really rolled up his sleeves, and I think he's understanding the issues, the concerns, and I think he's a great choice to have on the board. Aubrey, I want to thank you for where you got.
Just in a year, we have more money.
Yes, sir. That was better.
I feel like we have. I feel like somebody put their foot in the door, and we stopped this this thing from shutting on us. And what I'm saying is that what the secretary has assured Aubrey that that we will get something. And so, you know, if it's $1 million, I mean, at least it's $1 million. I mean, that's a big number. It's not what we need, but it's $1 million. The question is there a number that we should be asking for? I mean, do we have a project that we can say we need $1, $3, $5, $10 million for? Is there something? Is there a specific number that we could be asking for, or are we just asking for? You know, right now obviously we need $30 billion. I mean, I get that, but is there something that we could be asking for that would be very specific?
Madam Chair, I would recommend staff that we at least reinstate the monies that were taken off a year ago of 64 widening and just now taken off of 64-264 interchange as a starting point. Those were taken off, and I think they should, if we could, put those back, because those were staged to be moving into the breach.
I mean, because the issue is the planning money is gone. And so it's not sexy, and you can't see planning money, but nothing gets built unless it's planned for. And if as long as they're pulling planning money away from our projects, they're not going to go forward. And I think that's the difficult thing for folks who want to see something happening and want to put jobs on the ground, but jobs don't complete project. I mean, without planning, we don't get projects completed. And so we've got to make that point.
Madam, just to follow up on that, is there any benefit to this body making a motion, and then it becomes something that we actually vote on and we put in the record, and we're drawing a line in the sand, and to the extent possible, we're asking for that money to be put back in? Because I think Bruce is exactly right. Without the planning, therein lies the essence of the problem, is we're not ready. And so I don't know if we have a number yet, or if Ms. Weiss appears to know, but I mean, I want to send as strong a message as we can possibly send. I've looked at my calendar. I can't be there tomorrow. I wish I could. But I want to send as strong a message as possible that the TPO has arrived, that we're paying attention now, and we've got projects, just like Mayor Frame said, that are absolutely imperative to the safety and vitality of our community.
Madam Chair, I believe, Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount taken off of 64-264 was $40 million. The amount off of 64 white, I think, was single-digit $1 million. It was truly design work, but I think it was 40 that got taken off of the interchange.
I don't recall the exact number, but it was the money that we were doing for the environmental documentation to go forward with that project.
All right, so do you have a motion, Delegate Oder, that you want to propose?
Yes. I don't know what it is.
Well, how about we just restore the planning?
I clearly have a motion.
I mean, can I speak for
I
you?
move the funds which Mr. Farmer can better identify than I can would be restored into this bucket, and that he would take that request with the weight of this body to the meeting tomorrow.
Second.
I can put these on
Right,
record.
yeah, why don't you go ahead?
After you get a second. You want
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Goodson.
I have in front of me a list of, I'm going to say about a dozen projects that have had funding reductions in this revised. It starts out with the 264 interchange at 64, $39.4 million removed. That shows here interstate funding for PE and right-of-way, not just the planning. I don't think there's $40 million, then it's just on environmental. York County 17, Route 17, $5 million for PE and right-of-way in a primary system. In Isle of Wight, 620 reconstruction lost $1.1 million. In Surrey County, Route 626 lost $600,000 for PE right-of-way construction. Greenville County, that's outside of this area. York County, Route 641 lost $283,000 for PE right-of-way. Southampton County, $1.5 million on Route 671 for turn lane. Virginia Beach, Route 165 intersection improvements, $522,000. City of Poquoson, Route 172 Phase 1, $48,000. Chesapeake, Route 337, and Suffolk, Route 337, a combined total of about $1 million in PE and right-of-way, and the urban fund are taken out. And Suffolk, Route 626 reconstruction at $2.3 million. The total reductions in the district were $56.221 million.
Well,
yes, Mr. Chairman.
If I could add, Dominion Boulevard lost $10 million.
I've got more information here.
Yeah, maybe there's a different way to do it than read.
Well, these are actually increases. Yeah.
Madam Chairman, and I didn't hear the amount for 64 on the peninsula, that money
That was taken out, Mr. Goodson. That was taken out over a year ago.
Okay. And do
So
we know
it's been dead for, I think, close to a year and a half.
do we know how much that amount was?
I think it's single-digit millions of dollars. I know the contractor got called without notice of summer of 2008, and I think they were in design. But Dennis, maybe you can shed some light on what was going on.
In 264 on the peninsula, we had selected a contractor to do the environmental document, and we terminated the negotiations with the contractor and stopped that work.
And maybe that's a low-hanging fruit that's doable. That's an amount, I mean, the amount on the other interstate amounts are so high, I don't think we can get that doable.
If you don't, it doesn't sound critical, but if you don't in 2009 or 10 have those boxes checked, when you come to 2010 or 11 or 12, you've then got to start back at that point rather than be ready to move forward with the actual design. So it's all critical.
Well, Delegate, do you want to consider amending your motion to include not just the things that Dwight read, but also include restoring those design funds?
Well, if I may ask, city manager who mentioned 10 million, granted it's not on that list, but 10 million was taken away from the Dominion Boulevard.
We can check, we can verify that.
Thank you.
All right, so I think where we are, I need Delegate Oder to amend your motion.
So moved.
Okay, and Mr. Goodson, are you willing to second that amended motion?
I'll accept it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'd like to abstain.
I'll abstain.
All right, we got two. Ms. Inman and Mr. Hewer are abstaining. All right?
May I ask, I apologize, what does this mean for Mr. Farmer in the event that something comes up again in the future that he can seriously have the freedom to go forward and attend a meeting without having us to direct him to be there? I mean, I would hope that you would do it. I mean, Madam Chair, what would your prerogative be at this point?
Well, we can certainly advise him that any time that, you know, there is a public meeting or a meeting of the Commonwealth Transportation Board that requires advocacy on the part of the TPO, that it's our desire that he be there and advocate for things that we have obviously endorsed in the past. I mean, it's rather self-evident for what we've agreed on, I would say. We have motions and resolutions to back that up.
I would also suggest that as part of that, might invite other members of the commission to join in on an ad hoc basis. We don't have a meeting all the time where people volunteer to go. but I think having more than one person go and represent the region is an important thing to do. So I think we'll have to try and develop, a team who can respond to this stuff that's well informed on the issues to support him and be available and when possible speak.
Right, we could also empower the chair to, be appointed to talk to Mr. Farmer and make those decisions between the two of them about where he should go and when. Y'all remember that.
We'll not wait for an invitation.
Right.
Madam Chair, I will, for the record, advise that I will, before I do make such an appearance, I will at least advise the chair and vice chair that I am preparing to attend and solicit additional assistance from elected officials to do so.
Sounds great. Senator Miller?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that the members of the General Assembly would be helpful to us to know. We may not be able to go, but it would be helpful for us to know because we are interested in enhancing our region and making sure that our region is not shortchanged in the process. It's critical for us that we can show our constituents that we're working very hard on a critical issue.
All right. All right. The next item on the agenda, item number 7, is a report regarding a regional project prioritization. Oh, yeah, we did.
Did we vote? Yes, we
did.
We did. Okay.
And we are very honored today to have Admiral Mark Bensel with us obviously from the Navy, U.S. Navy, and he has a presentation for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. Board members, thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. Sitting in the back, I was a little fascinated by the conversation here you've just gone through. It sounds very much like the one I go through almost every day as well. And when I get into my presentation, you can kind of see why that is. And I am a regional commander. That's my title, a regional commander. And I've got some of my peers are also regional commanders, and we're all fighting for those same kind of issues. So thank you very much for having me today. What I want to present today is very shortly talk a little bit about kind of larger Navy things, tell you a little bit about my region and what my responsibility is, and then kind of focus down into Hampton Roads, and then finally talk a little bit about the transportation piece as well. Obviously, that's what you're most interested in here. The things that I do want to tell you, and it'll become obvious to you, I hope, would be that although my headquarters is here in Norfolk, my responsibilities are very broad beyond Hampton Roads. And because I have those responsibilities and there are expectations of folks like you and many other places, I have appointed very capable officers to represent me in places like this. Captain Johnson, in this case, represents me here, and I will tell you that he directly represents me, and I have full faith and confidence in the positions he's taking because he has talked to me about those things before he comes here. So please don't feel slighted that I'm not here personally. It's not because I don't want to be, it's sometimes I can't be. There's other things going on. So next slide, please. Okay. As many of you know, and certainly in this area of the country, sailors are really the foundation of what we do. We have a mission, but we can't do that mission without the people. We are a service that has a lot of hardware, but behind all that hardware is folks operating it and fixing it and maintaining it. That force today is a total force, and by that I mean we have active duty folks, we have reserve folks, we've got civilians, and we have contractors all working together to accomplish our mission. And those numbers look like about 330,000 active duty, about 108,000 reservists who come in and then may be mobilized. And currently, as of last week anyway, we had about almost 6,400 reservists that are mobilized serving somewhere around the world, and literally anywhere around the world. We have about 195,000 civilian employees in the Department of the Navy. Our ships right now, if we checked last week, it was 285 285 commissioned ships. About 134 of those, almost 50%, are currently deployed. They're someplace around the world. We have actually in the Central Command area of responsibility, where we've got 2 wars going, we actually have more Navy people with feet on the ground, on dry ground, than we actually have deployed there on ships. So we have about 25,000 people deployed in that area of responsibility. 15,000 of them are on the ground. They're not on a ship, supporting the operations going there. So we got people all over the world doing great work. Many of them are based here. Next slide, please. This is what I do, and what I'm in charge of is supporting those people, their families, and the forces. And so I'm kind of a territorial governor, if you will, and you'll see that in a successive slide. But each one of those bases has a mayor. In this case, Naval Station Norfolk has Captain Johnson is the mayor, if you will, and he's responsible for all the aspects of supporting these entities at his station. And that runs the entire gamut of running a city, and many of you understand what that is, from public works to fire departments to police to hotels and stores and restaurants. Every aspect of that is his responsibility, and of course he has a great staff to do that. Additionally, we run airports, we run port facilities. That's all part of what we do as well. So all to do that, to enable those warfighters to go to train and to go do their mission wherever that might take them. Next slide, please. Okay, there's my region. And so you can see, while the bulk of my holdings, if you will, happen to be here in Hampton Roads, I go all the way to the Canadian border. And so I've got 17 major installations, but 30 installations of some size. And additionally, I've got 33 what we used to call reserve centers, now we call Navy Operational Support Centers, spread around that AOR. It's a lot of people, a lot of stuff. As you can see, I've got 119 congressional districts. So there's plenty of people that are paying attention to what I do and how we do it. They get very interested, in addition to the 14 states, of course, with senators that pay attention to those things as well. And then bodies like this who are paying attention to what the Navy's doing. Because in those places, just like here, the Navy is a large presence. In many cases, it may be the largest employer in the area. And so what the Navy does is important to them in a whole lot of ways, not the least of which is economic. Next slide, please. Okay, so what do I do? Well, I support about 120 ships. So we had 285 in our total fleet. 120 of those are in my region. So I've almost got half of the Navy that I'm responsible for taking care of. A lot of squadrons there. We've got about total of 4,000 airplanes in our inventory. Many of those are here in my region. You can see the number of tenant commands, and oh, by the way, those tenant commands aren't all the time Navy. They may be Army, they may be Air Force, they may be Coast Guard, other federal agencies. Many people live on our bases. Got harbor security boats that we do the security, and we are supporting joint warfighters. Certainly here, you look at that, and the Joint Forces Command is here. But also, as I mentioned, we're supporting all kinds of other folks that are using our facilities, as well as a NATO command. Okay, let's get down to Hampton Roads. And what does that mean to you guys? Well, my Navy family population is about 20% of the Hampton Roads population, 250,000 plus people that my chain of command says, hey, you're in charge of making sure that these folks are taken care of and that they're safe. And to get back to Mayor Frame's concerns about storms and other natural disasters and the ability to move people out of harm's way, my chain of command expects me to be able to do that. And so do I get concerned during hurricane season? Absolutely. Because my chain of command is going to ask me, what did you do to make sure that those folks were out of harm's way before something bad happened? That gets me very interested in the transportation situation around here. You can see the numbers there, you can see the family members, and all of that translates into those kind of economic impacts here in Hampton Roads. Pretty big numbers. Next slide. Okay, so where does that get us on transportation? Well, if you look at the numbers, just take the naval station and naval support activity numbers, 66,000 plus vehicles a day in and out of those activities. That's a pretty big number, and I trust me, I get phone calls from a whole lot of people about that. How come traffic's backed up on 564 all the way to the 264 interchange? Well, in fact, the fleet commander called me the other day to ask me that, and he said, there people are blaming me for this because all the ships are in. And I said, sir, I'm not sure I can add any more clarity to that. What do you want me to do? I mean, I've only got so many gates, and they're open, and people are going to get there when they get there. So I certainly can appreciate the issues that you have, and we certainly understand the importance of those routes to get people there. And to the extent that we can make those routes more efficient and better, truly it is a readiness and operational issue for us. And I've had conversations with the new Fleet Forces Commander, 4-star Admiral Harvey, and I think many of the elected officials have had that kind of conversation with him. And he will tell you it's a readiness issue for us, because you saw the number of people we have working, and if those number of people can't get to work and do the things that we need them to do, then you start losing man days. It's not hours, it's man days worth of effort required to keep our fleet going and do the training that we're supposed to be doing. Okay, so you look at the big numbers there, the total traffic count, daily traffic count for just the Navy bases, and I can't speak for the Air Force or the Army here, so just the Navy bases is about, let's call it 125,000 vehicles a day during a typical weekday. That is not an insignificant amount of traffic on the roads. So we realize that, and to the extent that we can help in an effort, in a consolidated and a unified effort to make that better and easier in Hampton roads, we want to be part of that help. What I can't do for you, though, and I'll be quite blunt with this, is I can't take segmented parts of the community here and try to advantage one over the other. I can't get put in that position. I certainly understand the economic impacts of transportation systems to individual municipalities. Got it. I can appreciate that. So if you come to me and you ask me what do I think about the transportation things, I will give you the impacts that it is to the Navy. I will tell you what that means with regard to getting people to work and back. I will tell you what that means with regard to being able to operate and being able to move material and manpower back and forth, and give you the parameters for what I need. Now, if you're going to say, I want to build a bridge, what does that mean to me? Immediately what comes to mind to me is, how deep is the water, how high is the bridge, and how wide is it? Why is that? Because I got to move ships underneath that bridge and be able to move them back in and out without having to wait for the tide to go down or whatever. Those things are important to me because that keeps operational flexibility that I need to be able to move things. On the other side of that, I operate airplanes, and a lot of airplanes. And so anything that impinges on the sky that would impinge possibly on glide paths into an airport, I get interested in as well, because I'm operating aircraft, all kinds of aircraft, fixed wing and rotary wing aircraft in and out of my bases as well. So I'll let you know if I think that that's going to have an impact on what we do, and then it'll be over to you all to figure out, okay, how important in the grand scheme of things is that impact to you? And we'll let you know. We won't be shy about that. But the other thing is, I cannot be put in a position where I'm choosing one municipality's interest over another municipality's interest. Frankly, not fair to me and not my job. Okay? And so I just need to make sure that we understand the expectations that you can have from the Navy. We're fully supportive because it means a lot to us, but understand what I can do for you and what I can't do for you. So we have a significant and continuing interest. We're not going anyplace soon, folks. There's no indication that we are. We're here. We want to be good citizens. We are part of the community. As I said, 20% of your community is part of that Navy family. So we're here, and we're in for the long haul. We've assigned liaisons to the TPO. Captain Johnson is my main person here, but he's got a couple of staff members behind him. Amy and Joe are sitting there behind him, and they are interacting with your staff on a daily basis on these issues. To meet the Navy needs, you got to address the compatibility with our operations. If there's a showstopper, it's going to be because you're doing something that is going to keep me and the Navy from operating. We're going to push back hard on that. We're going to push back really hard on that because we answer to a different chain of command who wants to make sure that we can continue to do what we need to do. Safety and quality of life is a big deal for me, okay? I get graded on that. I get graded on the safety weekly on how my people are doing. POV, privately owned vehicles, gets briefed to the fleet commander, accidents and incidents gets briefed to the fleet commander every week, literally every week. So it matters to us. And quality of life, certainly, you know, we are fortunate right now that I guess, you know, things go in cycles. And with the economy down right now, people are anxious to get in the Navy and stay in the Navy. So recruiting and retention right now aren't a problem. But there are other things that impinge on people, certainly deployments and other things like that get to that quality of life piece. And so when folks are choosing to stay in my organization, a whole bunch of things go into that. And if they don't feel like they're being taken care of, and if they get tired of sitting on 564, for instance, for a long time, they're going to start to think about other things to do and maybe other places to go. And that's not a good thing for you guys. There's a lot of folks that in the service that come here from out of state in the service and stay here. And I would tell you that I think that's a huge benefit to this region because they come, they're skilled, they've got education, they've got dedication, and they're dependable and reliable and very good citizens. So I would think you want to keep them if you can. And so if you can make that better, it's better for me and better for you in the long run. I already addressed the official Navy comments. And I will tell you, if you've got a consolidated proposal, we'll give you everything we can to help you with that, but don't make me choose between one municipality or other. I just can't do that. And I understand, and I hope you understand as well. Things that we have made comments on in the past and are working currently is the new I-564 connector. Anyone who's been up and down Hampton Boulevard lately has kind of watched the progress going on that, and we're anxious for that to come through. Did it affect the Navy? Yeah, it did in a number of ways, not the least of which part of that goes through Navy property. And of course, we worked with you on that. And we've also made official comment, if you will, on the light rail expansion, specifically with the interest to have it come to the Naval Station. Could we comment on the benefit of it going to other places to benefit the Navy? Absolutely. And I think it would. And I've made comment about a month and a half ago in a public meeting about that. Do I think it would be beneficial to go to, for instance, to Virginia Beach? Yeah, I think it probably would, because we have not insignificant numbers of folks who transit across that corridor between Oceana, the Oceana area, and Norfolk. The nice thing about a fleet concentration area is people tend to stay there and they go back and forth from one base to the other. And I think with an attractive alternative method of getting to work, they might take advantage of that. Next slide. It is our hometown. We're proud of it. We're proud to be citizens here in Hampton Roads. Please, if there's anything we can do for you, let me know. The people are proud of what they do here and proud to represent you around the world. And with that, I'll take any questions, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Admiral. I really appreciate you being here. Anybody have questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Oliver? All right, let's move on to item number 8, which is the HRTPO project prioritization. Mr. Farmer's going to give us a presentation from the podium.
On this particular item, we're going to talk about the prioritization process. Let me give you some preparatory comments before I go into the slide. You all, as a board, had expressed concerns about scoring with a number, which then resulted in your being boxed into a number 1, number 2, number 3 project.
particularly when projects were not actually competing against one another. I'm going to show you, I think we're going to fix that. There was concerns with the content of the factors for scoring and rating and ranking, the weighting, the categories, and the lack of some good, solid, you can get your arms around economic analysis. We're going to fix that. I think what you're going to see here is that we in the Transportation Advisory Committee have come up with a solution. Jim, could you go to the next one? On November 18th, at your direction, the Transportation Advisory Committee, which is listed in this box to the lower right, met, and I think we thoroughly discussed ratings, rankings, and the prioritization process. So I wanted to make sure everyone knew that group had got together and spent some considerable time. Next slide. The Transportation Advisory Committee has recommended the exploration of a prioritization process that will, if you're agreeing to that today, will contain 3 components. I like to look at it as it will be a 3-legged stool, if you will. There will be project utility. That really is going to tell you how good a transportation project the ones in question are. All of the items that are included in that are listed after project utility. There will be project viability. I think some of you have heard, you really need to know, I think as Mayor Frame had said, you got a project ready to go. For instance, on the Midtown Tunnel. We'll know if we'll rate this project whether it needs additional funding, if there are prior commitments, and if there are federal mandates to get this project ready to go. And then the third leg of the stool is the economic vitality. A number of you have called me personally and requested that we drill further into that. I think that it ought to be the third leg on the stool. Now, when we put this stool together with the 3 legs, there's not going to be this project in the whole scheme of things is the region's #1 project. You will, as the TPO board, have to make that decision with the outputs. Once we are all in agreement on what the inputs are going to be into those mathematical modeling processes, based on those outputs, then you should be able to come to the table, necessarily ask some more questions. If not, be prepared, at least when you have projects competing against one another in a funding category, to define so that the world knows what this region's transportation priorities are. Next slide. We had a couple meetings with VDOT. I think Dennis and his staff came together with a great letter. I think everyone should have a copy of that in front of them. VDOT has, and these are the bullets that summarize the content of his letter, requesting that we revise the scope for the 3-phased approach, adding those things that you've seen before. Develop a scope cooperatively with us and your members and the VDOT staff, and put these things back in front of the steering committee, the TTAC, and if necessary, the Transportation Advisory Committee. Determine how we're going to fund that. I suspect Dennis is going to look toward me and say, I need a partner in this. And I've told him verbally I'm prepared to do so with our own resources. We're going to, they have recommended pursuing adding the 3rd evaluation criteria, which is economic vitality. And then we're going to set a schedule. Right now, I think I can tell you with some assurance, we should have this 3rd leg wrapped up, and Dennis should have his interim phase wrapped up and ready to go in the very, very near future. We should be ready to go with the economic work somewhere between early mid-spring and no later than May or June. So I think that would be our schedule, but we want to set that schedule. So on the last slide, the condensed version of the recommendation is we revise the scope for the 3-phase project, for the 3-phase approach, adding economic vitality, and we coordinate with VDOT as they have recommended in Dennis's letter.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Farmer, one thing though, I also did recommend, and you stated it, but not written up there, is we recommend that Kimley Horn complete delivery of the draft report. It's 8 chapters, approximately 100 pages, and call it version 1.2.
Correct.
The future, we're looking for 1.3, but I would like to include the recommendation to wrap up what we have already contracted for, so we have a deliverable product for the public.
And staff is in full agreement with that.
All right, so you're looking for us to approve your continuing exploration?
Essentially, the board's going to stand down, we're going to come back, wrap up the version 1.2 under the current VDOT contract, and then we're actually already engaged internally in going to the three-legged stool with economic, and then come back to you with a version 1.3, and we'll be giving you a briefing or two on that, so you'll know the full content. Before we then go off and take it from a test bed status to a full-fledged use of the tool for our analysis on prioritization.
Right, on the, I guess, second slide where you talk about project utility, project viability.
Yes.
Under project viability, you talk about additional funding availability. Where do you take into account the original funding availability?
Oh, that will also be included. I think it was implicit here. But if there's previous money,
utility, or is that project viability, or is
viability?
Viability. So it's not just additional funding.
No. Well, the additional is based on the mathematics of how much have you already got in your pot, and then how much more do you need?
Well, but what you're trying to do is give us a prioritization of projects at the end of the day.
Yes.
All this process, correct?
Yes.
Well, when you do that, it seems to me you have to understand whether there's money available to do it.
Absolutely.
You can't give priority to a project you can't fund.
You will receive
where does the funding fit in?
You will receive what we think we're going to recommend at this early stage is you will, rather than see a number score, you're going to receive an A through E, and this came from Kimley Horn, that will be based on how much money is already made available, how much money can be easily made available, and then how much more do you need to have that we currently can't see on the horizon. And you'll receive a score. So you may have a great project that's very difficult to fund or get done, or you may have a project that's low-hanging fruit, the money's there, just waiting to be taken off the tree.
Madam Chair? I'm just trying to remember back to where we were last month. And last month we saw a chart, and one of the things I remember was economic vitality, I think, had 5% decided, and then there's subcategories underneath. And we're not seeing that, and I thought we voted on that last month with some revisions. Are these those revisions, and how will, I'm trying to figure out, why are we not seeing a comparison between what we approved last month and where we are right now?
We have turned this on its ear today. I have presented to you a process that essentially will turn this on its ear. We did, in fact, take action last month to approve that methodology, but based on the content of that discussion and based on a number of conversations that have occurred since then, I felt that my responsibility to come back to you and say staff's recommendation is, given all of those those conversations and discussions and comments, was that what we really need to do is get a better handle on economics. So we'll have some, as our chief economist will tell you, Greg will tell you, we are going to have in project utility some things that the economists would say are things they get interested in but are still part of utility. We're going to try to get into those things that I call economic development issues, potential for economic development, potential for growing the gross regional product, etc. that economists would say are part of an economic analysis, and separate those out without double counting. And then we're going to separate out, as staff's recommending, project viability, which include the items here that really revolve around, is it fundable? Are they doable? Is it a mandate? And have those three independent things that you can look at and say, is it low-hanging fruit? Is it a good project? Is it going to do good things for the region in the future? And then make a decision on prioritization. And we will prioritize within funding pots, not pitting a Midtown tunnel against a third crossing, for instance. So that's why I say we really are turning this on its ear for today's discussion.
All right, I'm happy to remain open-minded to see what you come up with. I just want to comment that what I liked about what I saw last month was that I didn't understand it. And what I mean by that is I looked at that and I thought you'd have to be a chess master or beyond to be able to input the information to come up with a predetermined answer. And so I appreciated the fact that there was so much subjectivity to this thing and there was so much input that was going in. It was almost impossible to fabricate a way where it appeared to me where your project would come out being on top. And so I believed and trusted what I was looking at last week. I'm concerned that if we oversimplify it, that it's going to be something that if we don't like the output, that we can change criteria, which I guess you could have done with the previous one, but it would have been more difficult. So I'm concerned about simplifying this too much, but I will say that I remain open-minded, and then I'll also say this, that I think at the end of the day, that there is going to come a common sense transportation perspective to this, that we in this group are going to have to coalesce around. In other words, it didn't bother me whatsoever last time to see the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel project being the #1 project. Understanding that was a test, that was a draft, but just as an example, here's a project which has no planning, which has no money. We have no idea what it's going to look like, and it's our #1 project. We have a second project, which is the Midtown Tunnel, which we have a plan, we have a proposal, we're ready to go, to go forward on that. It didn't bother me at all to make a public statement saying, let's go build the Midtown Tunnel, but because it's ready. But the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, or in this case, if that is your #1 project, or whatever your #1 project is, we ought to at least be working on it. It just makes all the sense in the world. So I liked where we were last time, and maybe I'm a lot of voice, but I'm open-minded and I look forward to seeing this unfold.
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Delegate Odor, let me assure you, one, that the process will not be less complicated. It's going to be actually more complex, and I will assure you staff will, unless you direct me otherwise, will make every effort to not allow any stacking of the deck. You will receive an honest, subjective evaluation on project utility. You will receive an honest, objective evaluation or a grade of whether that project really is, as Mayor Frame said on Midtown Tunnel, if it's ready to go. And if it's ready to go and is of high utility, I think you folks will come to an easy decision to say that is a very high priority project. So that's the way we envision the process. It will not be less subjective, and it will not be less complex. In fact, the complexity and subjectivity, I think, will increase dramatically.
All right, so, Ms. Farmer, what you're looking for from us is a motion to continue exploration of the three-component system. You want?
We're going to make it a three-legged stool, very complex, very objective. We're going to go with the VDOT recommendations that are very methodical here because they have a consultant under contract. We want to operate under the constraints that they're operating on. I've highly recommended to Dennis and his staff that they remain a partner with us on this until we wrap this up, at least through 1.3. Dennis has agreed to do that, so I think we're on board with that. So we're asking for approval to do that. As soon as we have something that we can show you in a slide, we'll bring it back.
All right, Mayor Frame, do you want to say something?
I was going to move approval.
Oh, great. Great, do it, please.
Okay. All right. But I'm glad to discuss it. Doug, you have something?
I just want to make sure I can explain it. So we're going to basically end up with 3 columns. There will not be, at this point, a summary column that says the 3 add up to this. And
No. That's where it makes it complex for you folks.
All right, Mayor Frame. Do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, yes.
Before we make a motion, may I just add one question?
Yes, sir.
Under project utility, I believe it is, does land use compatibility, and really just referencing what Admiral Benzel had brought up, where does the impact, where do we play in that impact? Where do we play as far as vetting, or at least offering
Sir, we will treat the military just as we would any community. If it benefits you and has great implications on the Admiral's numbers of 66,000 vehicles, that is an improvement in level of service, we're going to put you there just as if you were a member of the community as a locality.
Right, and obviously it's not only in the quality of life and traffic enhancements, but also the operational impact is really what I was referencing.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so we have a motion from Mayor Frame and a second from Mayor Zeidler. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Thank you. So that brings us to item number 9, which is the 2030 Long Range Transportation Plan Amendment.
Hey, Madam Chair, this should be not too complex. It should be quick, but there may be a lot of implications. So if there's anything that's not clear, please let me know, even as I go through this. Next slide, Jim. On November 18th, the TPO Board directed the Transportation Advisory Committee to review this opening up of the 2030 Long Range Transportation Plan Amendment process. Next slide. As background, do you recall, I believe I've got this right, February 29, 2008, the Virginia Supreme Court ruled that the taxes and fees for the HRTA were unconstitutional. We received a letter from Federal Highway Administration, from Ivan's office, outlining, and then had some example Q&A to help explain their position. They said that they could leave the plan in place as they had approved, knowing the ruling of the Virginia Supreme Court, as long as there were no amendments to the plan. And that the HRTA projects, in my words, not theirs, in my words, the HRTA projects were essentially frozen unless you could come forward if you had to have an amendment for whatever reason. And there are now some compelling reasons to have an amendment, as I'm going to cover in just a moment, that you can amend, but you essentially would lose these projects in that amendment process unless you could substitute funding for those HRTA revenue sources. So it's a couple double negatives in here. I'm not the English major here, but you understand, everything is frozen, but if you amend, they come out unless you find substitute funding for those HRTA projects. Next slide. So during the December 3rd meeting of the TAC, they have recommended, and this is their words, this is our words, maybe it's not the best word, we really did struggle with what to call this. We called it an expedited amendment. And I know, Ivan, you had some questions about the expedited amendment. What we have learned is that the projects that are in Tiger Grant applications as we speak that are not contained in the 2030 plan would possibly not get due consideration in the very, very near future if we continue to leave them out of the officially approved TPO Long Range Transportation Plan. So what the TAC has recommended for those projects alone, knowing that the HRTA projects for the moment have to come out, they've recommended we amend the plan knowing those projects have to come out for the moment and that these projects go back into the plan so that they are not, as the next slide will show you, they are not put in jeopardy of being ignored or not being given due consideration in their grant application process. That's both for ARRA as well as FTA for the transit projects, the light rail projects. So we understand we're between a rock and a hard spot. I wish we weren't there, but we've frozen it, I think, as long as we can, and now these projects need to not be put in this jeopardy. Now, if you go to the next slide, the Transportation Advisory Committee, essentially your city managers and the stakeholders, have also recommended that we accelerate. And I'll tell you, it's going to come sooner than you think and maybe sooner than you wish for, but by the summer of 2011, you will have needed to approve, gone through the deliberations and need to approve a final draft 2034 plan. I think we barely have enough time to have those discussions. So it will be an accelerated process just to do 2034, just to go back and readdress the HRTA projects, and they have recommended that in that 2034 process, as a dual recommendation from TAC, that all the Hampton Roads water crossings, including HRBT, be a part of that 2034 discussion and analysis. Haven't recommended including anything or excluding anything other than to put it on the table that we readdress those and other projects that are starting to come to the table for 2034, and you really don't have much time to do that by the summer of 2011.